Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, it's time to go over the results of April's theme Letterboxd 4, which was comedies. Now, if you're new to this series, again, just a quick rundown of what this is every single month I'm doing a different category. So, for example, the month of April was comedies. And so at the beginning of the month, I do a video where I kind of give you the what my current Letterboxd 4 is, and then throughout that month, I watch a bunch of different movies that I think could have a chance of cracking in that Letterboxd 4, or just, a bunch of things that fit the category, movies that I haven't seen, and just watch more films. And so that's typically the first video at the beginning of the month, and then this one is supposed to be, kind of right at the end of the month or the beginning of the next month, obviously a couple weeks later on this one. But this one is the results video where we go and we talk about the original 4 that I had, and talk about all of the different movies that I saw this month that fit that category, and we just talk about if there was anything that changed in that Letterboxd 4, and just quick reviews over all the movies that I did see. So without further ado, let's just jump straight into the honorable mentions. There's 3 honorable mentions that I want to talk about that I watched last month for the sports video that also kind of still work in the comedy video. The first is Dodgeball, a true underdog story. This is one of the films that missed the cut that was closest to making it. A theme you'll see in this video is that I love quotable comedies, and this is absolutely one of the most quotable. A lovable misfit group of characters that make for an enjoyable viewing experience every single time. Caddyshack. I watched this for the sports video, but it definitely fits better in the comedy category. I do wish I had seen this earlier in my life, because this feels like the type of film to be nostalgic for. I'm sure I'll watch this again years from now, and I'll see if the comedy works better for me then. Happy Gilmore. Admittedly, I haven't seen all of Adam Sandler's filmography, but he's always been a little hit and miss for me. While I don't love the film as much as the majority of people do, I will say that this is still a hit for Sandler. I'm not super optimistic for Happy Gilmore 2, but here's to hoping that that's a hit as well. And then the honorable mentions that I watched this month, 22 Jump Street. While it's a definite step down from the first film, it's still a whole lot of fun. Wyatt Russell and Jillian Bell are great new additions to the returning cast. Now we just need Channing Tatum to manifest 23 Jump Street the way he manifested Gambit. Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. The rare horror comedy that is eligible since it's more comedy than horror. I probably watched this 10 plus times the first year I saw this, and it instantly became a comfort movie for me. If you haven't seen this movie, do not watch the trailer, and watch this as blindly as possible. Hot Rod. The first handful of times I watched this film were back to back to back the day that I got my wisdom teeth taken out. That day, this was the funniest movie ever made, and surprisingly, it still holds up as well on a rewatch over a decade later. Any film that can take a conflict and plot as dumb as this, and make a compelling and hilarious story around it, deserves its flowers. A Minecraft movie. Without a doubt, the worst movie in today's video. With that being said, I will admit that I'm not the intended target since I haven't played the game, so there is clearly more fun to be had for those who have played. It just makes me sad that this was Jared Hess's follow-up to his Oscar-nominated 95 Senses. Pop Star, Never Stop, Never Stopping. I remember loving this when I saw it in theaters years ago, but I loved it even more on this rewatch. Andy Samberg is possibly my favorite comedian, and he is firing on all cylinders here. The best part of the film is the soundtrack, which is one that I will gladly throw on and listen to anytime. Jojo Rabbit. I felt a little conflicted putting this in the comedy video. While the film is laugh-out-loud funny for the majority of the runtime, it's the emotion of the third act that really makes me fall in love with the film. This was really close to making the final Letterboxd 4, but I ultimately favored straight comedies for the final 4 list. Game Night. One of the best comedies to come out in the last several years. A very fun premise that balances the high stakes and comedy while setting you up for several twists along the way. The entire cast is hilarious, but it's Jesse Plemons as the awkward neighbor that steals the show in his limited scenes. Bottoms. Io Adebri's Hezekiah monologue is the hardest I've laughed at a scene in a while. An absurd comedy that doesn't just sprinkle in the absurdity, but goes all in on it. The movie didn't completely live up to the hype I had for it, but it's still a great time. Spaceballs. I came to the realization while watching this that I saw this as a kid before I ever saw a Star Wars film. This fits right along the collection of films I love because my family watched over and over again when I was a kid. This is the first time seeing this since I was very young, so I was surprised to see how many of the jokes I still had memorized, and all the references to the other 70s and 80s films that I now understand. Palm Springs. Much like Jojo Rabbit, I ultimately decided to leave this out of the Letterboxd 4 because it's the drama and the romance that makes me fall in love with the film. You've seen the trend in this video that I love Andy Samberg, but Kristen Milioti is the star here. She not only matches Andy Samberg's humor, but she often steals the scenes that they share. Johnny English. As someone who never saw anything Mr. Bean, this was my introduction to Rowan Atkinson. This is my first time watching this in 15 plus years, so I was shocked to discover that this was also my introduction to John Malkovich. And as the credits rolled, I was even more shocked to discover that I did know a Robbie Williams song. Blazing Saddles. Having just rewatched Spaceballs a couple days prior, I was excited to watch another Mel Brooks film. A lot has been said regarding this satire and if it's insensitive or could be made today. I didn't have any significant issues with the content of the film as it is a satirical comedy, but ultimately I just didn't find it as funny as so many other people do. Super bad. There's no doubt in my mind that if I had seen this when I was in high school, it would have been one of my favorite movies of all time. It has all of the elements that a great comedy needs to stick with you and remain in the cultural zeitgeist. With that said, it didn't fully click with me on the first watch to push it over from like to love, but it is one that I look forward to watching again very soon in the future. This is the end. The summer this movie came out was the first time I was going to the movies by myself. I was aware of who the majority of the actors in the film were, but I wasn't super familiar with anyone's filmography, so this was my first real impression of everyone. I had a blast with the meta-comedy, and it still works for me every time I watch it. Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Considered by many as one of the greatest comedies of all time, this was one I was embarrassed to admit that I hadn't seen. There were a couple bits that worked really well for me, but there was a fair amount that fell flat. It is absolutely quotable though, so I do wonder if this is one that I'll appreciate the more and more I watch it. Bridesmaids. I have heard so many people talk about this as one of their favorite comedies ever, so I was disappointed that I didn't like this as much as everyone else does. Having seen the clips of the time to party airplane scene and the trying on dresses scene, I was expecting the whole movie to be non-stop chaotic hilarity. However, the film has a lot of quieter and dramatic scenes, which are good, it just wasn't what I was expecting. Airplane. I know I had seen this at least once as a kid, but I didn't remember the plot as much as I remembered some of the scenes. I was shocked at how much fun I had with this. Quite possibly laughed harder at this film than the majority of the other films I watched this month, but didn't quite find its way into the Letterboxd 4. The Naked Gun, from the Files of Police Squad. Another one that I remember seeing at least once as a kid, but I didn't remember anything about this film. Leslie Nielsen is incredible as the bumbling Frank Drebin. What I've discovered this month is that I love the 10 jokes a minute spoof comedies from the 70s and 80s. The Naked Gun 2.5, The Smell of Fear. I'm not sure if I saw any of the Naked Gun sequels as a kid, but with the new film coming out this year, I wanted to watch the whole franchise. The film is a great continuation of the first, but didn't quite land with me in the same way. Richard Griffiths was a fun addition to the sequel, and Priscilla Presley continues to have great chemistry and timing with Leslie Nielsen. Naked Gun 33 1/3, The Final Insult. I definitely don't think I saw this one as a kid, but I definitely know I saw the DVD cover and had a good laugh at the 33 1/3 titling. Again, a fun continuation of the franchise, but by the time you get to the third film, it does start losing some of the charm and magic. I will give the film credit for the fun third act set piece and the iconic facepalm gif that came from it. Top Secret. This is one that I'm not sure if I ever saw as a kid, but I looked at the floating cow DVD cover so much that I thought I had. Val Kilmer is fun as the lead, but there just isn't a whole lot here that landed for me. It was fun going on this trip down memory lane and watching all of these David and Jerry Zucker films. Tropic Thunder. Like This Is the End, this is another meta-comedy following actors having to survive in an emergency situation and the hilarity that comes from that. A true ensemble comedy that is filled from top to bottom with great performances. I wish Jack Black would turn back to this style of comedy as opposed to where his career has been going. Mystery Men. I saw this a bunch as a kid, but Pee Wee Herman's spleen character was the only thing I could remember from the film. I was super excited to give this a rewatch for the first time in 2 decades to see how it holds up. It wasn't as hilarious as I was hoping it would be, but the film isn't trying to be the non-stop spoof movie I thought it was, as much as it is a ragtag superhero film. Red Rocket. Unfortunately, I'm not the biggest fan of Sean Baker's filmography as a whole, but I will give Red Rocket credit for having one of the better plots out of all of his films. Outside of Mikey Madison in Anora and maybe Brooklyn Prince in The Florida Project, Simon Rex gives the best performance in any of Sean Baker's films. While there are plenty of funny moments in the film, it's the drama stemming from the third act incident that makes the story work for me. UHF. It may not be cool to admit that you grew up on Weird Al Yankovic, but I was. I knew of this film, but somehow this is my first time watching it. While the premise is funny, is it crazy to think that I wanted this film to be weirder? Now, from the setup video at the beginning of the month, where I gave my original Letterboxd 4, there is one change, so let's talk about the film that fell out of the Letterboxd 4. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. While the majority of Edgar Wright films are equally fast paced and entertaining, this film stands out as my favorite of his. As the years go by, it's fun to revisit this film just to see the all star cast and where all of their careers have gone since this film. This film didn't get any worse on this rewatch, I just realized there was another comedy that I enjoyed a little bit more. Now let's take a look at the final Letterboxd for 21 Jump Street. When cops Schmidt and Jenko join the secret Jump Street unit, they use their youthful appearance to go undercover as high school students. They trade in their guns and badges for backpacks and set out to shut down a dangerous drug ring. But, as time goes on, Schmidt and Jenko discover that high school is nothing like it was a few years earlier. And, what's more, they must again confront the teenage terror and anxiety that they thought they had left behind. 21 Jump Street was released in 2012 and was directed by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. The film stars Jonah Hill, Channing Tatum, and Brie Larson. Now, when I was going over the honorable mentions, when I was talking about Superbad, I talked about how I mentioned that that was a film that I said that if I had saw this in high school, like, that, I think that would have been my favorite movie of all time. Like, I would have just loved that movie. And I made that comparison, or I made that realization, I think, solely because of 21 Jump Street. I think I look at those two films almost kind of similarly in the sense that like it's kind of the same style of comedy in a sense, that I just think that because of how much I love 21 Jump Street and how much that this film has just stuck with me over the years, I do think that I think Superbad I think would have had that same thing, but instead of just kind of seeing it, uh, 12 to 15 years later than I should have, it kind of like just doesn't quite hold the same magic that 21 Jump Street for me does for me. Now 21 Jump Street again, it's hilarious to me. It is it's like a perfect comedy in the sense that it's every single scene, every single character is getting to fire off jokes, and it's the same thing where you get certain characters that they have the certain jokes or the certain things, if they're in a scene, these are the kind of jokes, or maybe we're making fun of this thing about him or this appearance, or, and it kind of does, maybe has some sprinklings or some hints of like those, being repetitive over and over again. But the comedy, I think, is done so well that characters are allowed to evolve, and if there's something that we're making fun of a character for pretty early, then pretty quickly they'll kind of shed that, and all of a sudden, they have character growth or development or something, and now all of a sudden that's not necessarily something that we're just picking on or making fun of this character for, or the type of comedy. Or if it is someone like Jenko who's struggling, Channing Tatum's character, he's struggling to adjust back to this new high school, and he's kind of like still trying to like make fun of people for certain things. That humor is shut down and spun on its head, and then all of a sudden now the scene's funny for another reason. We're not laughing at Channing Tatum for being the bully, we're laughing at everyone's reaction to someone trying to be a bully, and all of a sudden it's like there's like levels to the humor of where the joke isn't just haha, making fun of a gay kid. All of a sudden now it's, oh no, you're, the line that I die every time is, when he says, you punched me because I'm gay, and, I punched you and you just happened to turn out to be gay, and I was gay when you punched me. So you get those lines where it's like, you get the humor and then they flip it. And so there's just a lot with this comedy where it's like, it could have just been a very dumb and simple comedy in that sense, but I think the screenplay, and I think the care that was put into the script and that was put into the comedy is what makes it work so well for me. And again, this is another one, honestly, a lot like and maybe I'm making this comparison just because of Brie Larson, but it's a lot like Scott Pilgrim, where this is another one where you look at this cast and it's so fun to see. I guess a lot of the people were probably pretty big when this film was made. But yeah, you got Brie Larson and Dave Franco, and then you've got obviously Channing Tatum, Jonah Hill are incredible, Ice Cube, you got Dakota Johnson in a very small role. You've got I'm drawing a blank on her name, Ellie Kemper, Dax Flame, and I'm drawing a blank on like the coach's name. But like you've just got Jake Johnson is in there. Chris Parnell, is that his name? Like it's just one of those things where the cast is so deep and it's just so many different players. They all come in and maybe they only have a scene or two, but they come in. Like Chris Parnell's character, where he comes in and he gets to talk about doing cocaine with Willie Nelson's horse, and like he's there for kind of like one real important scene. I guess he has another scene a little bit later, but he kind of just has that one real funny scene there, and then that's kind of it for him. Same with Jake Johnson, kind of gets the one kind of funny scene at the beginning, and then that's really it for him. And so it's just this fun thing where you get this cast of characters where everyone, no matter how many scenes they have, whenever they're on screen, they're firing, 100, and it's not quite, like the spoof comedies where every single line is a joke and a punchline, but like they'll set up some jokes and it's constantly, every minute, there are multiple jokes kind of being fired off. And again, it's just one for me that 21 Jump Street, I think I talked about this a little bit in the last video I uploaded on my channel, where I think a good thing with like quotable comedy specifically, what makes those so fun is the fact that you can rewatch it a million times, and each time you watch it, you start quoting the film along as you're watching it. 21 Jump Street is one of those that every time I watch it, I'm quoting all of the jokes along with the film the entire time, and it's just one that makes me happy, and it's one that I saw this when I was in high school, kind of when you're in that. I think maybe and this is another thing I talked about in the last video, my rat race video on my channel, where I talked about I think when you're young you kind of develop the humor of your parents, and then maybe when you're in middle school, high school, that's when you kind of like start branching off and you try and find your own humor, the things that you find funny that like you're not going to watch with your parents. And I think for me that's kind of what 21 Jump Street was. It was kind of one of those first films that I was watching by myself, and like that's where I was kind of branching off into this type of humor. And so I think that's part of why 21 Jump Street for me, there's just again so many factors, but it all just works really well for me. The next film is Booksmart. Two academic teenage superstars realize, on the eve of their high school graduation, that they should have worked less and played more. Determined to never fall short of their peers, the girls set out on a mission to cram 4 years of fun into one night. Booksmart was released in 2019 and was directed by Olivia Wilde. The film stars Caitlin Dever, Beanie Feldstein, and Jason Sudeikis. Now, Booksmart is the film here that took over for Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. And Booksmart is interesting because in my preview video, what I do in all the preview videos, if you haven't seen them, is I give you my current Letterboxd 4, and then I give you what I call three challengers, pretty much like three films that I've seen, but maybe it's been a minute and I don't know if they're going to quite, if they could crack into that Letterboxd 4. And then I give like three films that I haven't seen. But at least, between the current Letterboxd 4 plus these three films, I'm giving you 7 films that I have seen and I love. And I don't know why I just forgot about Booksmart when I made that video, because it didn't make either the Letterboxd 4 or the contenders. And it was like once I was kind of looking, when I was just kind of watching some movies over this last month, and I was like looking at my Letterboxd trying to find like movies that I'm like, oh, maybe I should rewatch that. And all of a sudden I was just kind of scrolling and I saw Booksmart pop up, and I was like, why did that not at least crack in like my contenders? Because like I love Booksmart. And Booksmart, and it's kind of weird now that this is twice now, both with 21 Jump Street, I was kind of talking about Superbad, and now I think with Booksmart, I'm going to talk about Superbad again a little bit too, because I think for a lot of people, I remember when I saw Booksmart, because I saw this in theaters and hadn't seen Superbad at that point in my life, and I remember so many people, maybe not necessarily a full-on critique, but something that they were kind of discrediting Booksmart a little bit with is they were just kind of calling it a knockoff Superbad, or the girl version of Superbad or whatever. And again, as someone who hadn't seen Superbad but knew that it was like regarded as one of these great comedies, I kind of was like, maybe there's something to be said, there's some truth to that or whatever. But for me, having not seen it, I'm not watching Booksmart and I'm not thinking of Superbad while I'm watching it. I'm not thinking of this as some kind of knockoff. I'm just watching it as like, for me, that was an original fun script, a fun story, and just a super fun movie. And now, now that I've watched Superbad for the first time, it's kind of one of those. I obviously you see the similarities. You have the two friends and trying to, obviously in Superbad they're just trying to get alcohol for a big party, and then in this one it's more so just they realized they didn't party all throughout high school because they wanted to get into the best colleges, and then they realized that all of the kids that partied got into the same colleges, and so they kind of feel like they just wasted time, so they're trying to cram like 4 years of parties into like one epic party is essentially what they're trying to do. It's the same thing. They're just trying to get to the party, and I guess it's kind of the same in Superbad. It takes them a while to even get to the party. So I do see the similarities, but for me, I don't know if this is blasphemous, and I don't know if maybe if it's just a little bit biased because again I saw Booksmart first, but I have more fun with Booksmart, and I do think that Superbad is one that, again, I'll watch it more and more in my life, and maybe I'll kind of have more fun with it, as the years go by. But for me, there's something about that experience of seeing Booksmart in the theaters, just falling in love with it, falling in love with all the characters, the again, this is another one where it's a straight comedy for the whole thing, but there are moments, emotional moments, and kind of I don't want to necessarily say full on like romance, but kind of some flirty and some romantic scenes kind of in the end, and those scenes that like that heart I think is what, because you get this raunchy comedy and then you get these very beautiful and well crafted kind of more emotional moments in the third act that, again, it just kind of created a really fun movie for me. And this is one of those movies that, because of this, like, this was. Maybe I'm misspeaking here, but I'm pretty positive this was Olivia Wilde's directorial debut. And after seeing this, I remember watching this being like, I'm she's one of my favorite directors. Like, I'm gonna watch everything Olivia Wilde makes. Like, she was so phenomenal in this. And so for a couple years, Don't Worry, Darling was one of my most anticipated like movies, and that obviously didn't hold up, wasn't as great for me as Booksmart was. But again, there's just this film, just this had the magic. This was so fun for me. I love the soundtrack. Every now and then, sometimes it can feel a little obnoxious because it is just like song after song after song. But there are just so many moments, like the moment of with Caitlin Dever when she's like swimming. That song that's playing just sticks with me. It's like kind of this beautiful moment. I mean, the Alanis Morissette "You Ought to Know" karaoke song right beforehand is like super, like, just a fun moment in the film. Like the soundtrack, it's excellent, and it's the same thing. This is another one with such a deep ensemble with all these different kids, and it's one of those that I almost like, because I remember this being the film that I think I first saw. I'm afraid I'm going to butcher her name. I think it's Diana Silvers, which films used to have Diana Silvers. I miss seeing her in movies. She has. I feel like I haven't seen anything with her in a minute. But I remember like thinking. I remember like discovering her in this film and then rewatching this for the first time in probably years. I was kind of shocked when I was watching it, being like, oh, she only has like 2 or 3 scenes like total in the movie. She's not really in it as much as I remembered her being. Same with Molly Gordon. Like, she's got a couple scenes here and there, but like I feel like I distinctly remember her being a lot bigger of a part. But I think it's because the ensemble is so deep. There's so many different characters, and outside of Billy Lord, is that her name? I'm drawing the blank on the characters' names, but Billy Lord and I'm gonna butcher his name too, Skylar Gisorndo, something like that. Between those two, who kind of just keep popping up, I guess they're kind of a little bit more recurring because they're everywhere all the time. But other than that, the movie, the plot, it's kind of taking you from place to place, and so you are just getting to interact with so many different characters and getting to have these different characters, the different things, the different stylings of comedy that they bring, whether it be Eduardo Franco's character or Mason Gooding's character, that brings a little bit different energy, and is it Jessica Williams that plays the teacher? She brings a little bit different energy. Jason Sudeikis has his own comedy. Will Forte and Lisa Kudrow have different, it's different comedy that's, I guess not different comedy, it's just raunchy comedy, but like different ways of delivering kind of the comedy, different rhythms and flows to how the jokes are landing and how they're firing off in all of those scenes. And it's just one of those that for me, I have so much fun with Booksmart. And I can't believe in my setup video that I forgot about it, because it should have absolutely either just been straight up in the Letterboxd 4 to start, or in the honorable mentions. There is kind of one. This is one that I gave this a 4.5 on first watch, and I've kind of just left it at a 4.5 on Letterboxd, because there is like one plot that I don't particularly like, and so it's like I just don't find it super funny, and so it's kind of like the one thing that kind of just makes it not quite a perfect film for me. But outside of that, everything else on the film, it's just perfect for me. The next film is Clue. Clue finds 6 colorful dinner guests gathered at the mansion of their host, Mr. Body, who turned up dead after his secret is exposed. He was blackmailing all of them. With the killer among them, the guests and Body's chatty butler must suss out the culprit before the body count rises. Clue was released in 1985 and was directed by Jonathan Lynn. The film stars Tim Curry, Madeline Kahn, and Christopher Lloyd. Now, the previous video on my channel, the latest episode in my Finding My Letterboxd 4 series, I talked about a film that was a childhood movie for me, and I kind of was talking about, and I guess it's not like some crazy. I'm sure I'm not the person that's made up that concept or the phrase of a childhood movie, but essentially it's just like the movies that you and your family watched as a kid, and it was just constantly on rotation. Like it's just one that you watched so much and you fell in love with. And that other film that I talk about, and it's the next film we're going to talk about on this video as well, is like the main example of that for me. But Clue is probably second. This is another one that we loved watching this as a family. And I will say that if you haven't seen Clue, part of the reason that it was so fun as a kid is they did this fun thing, and I remember my parents telling me this, so I could, this is like information coming straight from my parents, so I don't know if it was all accurate, but there is three different endings to this film. And I remember the way they told me, or they told us as a kid, is like if you went and saw this in the theater, you would get one of the three endings and you didn't know which one you would get. And that was kind of just like the fun of going to see it in the movie theater. Is it's like even if you had already seen it once, and if you got one of the endings, maybe you're going to get a different ending this time. And I remember as a kid thinking that that was so fun, that there's three different, because I mean it's a lot like a game of Clue. Obviously every single time you play it, there's going to be a different killer, it's going to be a different weapon, it's going to be a different room, like everything changes every time you play. And so it's kind of the same thing, that when you watch the film, it's going to be a different ending every time. And I remember as a kid when we watched it so many times, I remember spending so many different times watching it, trying to see what changes would happen. Because when you get to the third act and you get, your typical detective movie where you get the detective, or in this case the butler, that lays it all out and explains exactly step by step how it happened. He'll tell you certain things of like, this character wasn't here in this scene, or we all went to the billiard room and one person was missing. Who was that person? They were the one, that went out and stole the gun, or they're the one that killed the police officer that came into the house, or they're the ones that shot the singing telegram. Like he's kind of breaking it all down, and he's talking about how there's certain characters that are missing in each scenes, and that's how you know who did it. And so I remember as a kid watching this so many times, so intently, trying to piece it together and be like, yes, this is the scene. I remember him talking about this. You don't see Miss White in this scene, or you don't see Mr. Green in this scene, so obviously that means it's gonna be them, and not realizing. I mean, maybe when I was like 10 or 12 or something, I finally realized that I'm like, the movie just plays the exact, like nothing changes. Like the movie plays the same way, and then you just get the three different endings or whatever. But I remember as a kid being like so in love with this film and so intently watching that I thought I would be able to like tell which ending I got before you got to the end, not realizing that it's just completely random every time. But still, I still just had so much fun with, I mean, just not only like that concept of like the alternative endings or the different things, but it's just the comedy that even comes from that. Like it's essentially, you think of a film like Knives Out, which I didn't include, and I talked about it in my setup video. I didn't include that because I don't necessarily view that as much as a comedy, as much as I view it as like a detective film, a mystery. And obviously, Knives Out is funny, but when you get to the Benoit Blanc, giving his spiel and saying here's who did it and here's how they did it or whatever, then it becomes a very serious thing. And I guess there is still a little bit of humor there, but obviously in that film, it is way more intense and it's more serious. Like we're really uncovering something. In this, even the reveal of who the killers are, that those entire scenes are just played as jokes. Like the whole thing from start to finish, it is just very quick, rapid fire jokes. And this is another one of those films too where it's again not only just like a super quotable comedy, which I mean obviously it is, but it's another, like it's a film too where a lot of the comedy is just like you have to, like you can't just be on your phone watching this film, because so much of the comedy is the body language, or it's you know kind of the scenes where like Mrs. White is talking about her husband's kind of turning up dead, and all of a sudden you can see all of the men either crossing their legs or just talking about losing genitalia, and they'll kind of get all uncomfortable, and there'll just kind of be all these different scenes like that where it's just like it's little shifts in body language. Like that is the type of humor that's coming out of this film as well. So it's not just again like the quotable comedy, but it's so much, the comedy is so much more than that. There's just so much that is firing on all cylinders with Clue. And again, it's super fun. It's a fun film too, just seeing like Tim Curry and Christopher Lloyd and Madeline Kahn and I'm drawing a blank on it again because I don't know a lot of their names, but it's one of those that when I watch this and I go back and, or when I go back and watch this, and I see these actors and I realize like they've been in more. I've seen them in more films, kind of going forward throughout their careers, and so it's a lot of fun just kind of revisiting this. It totally fits that mold of like the family film, the film that you saw as a kid that you just fell in love with, and it's just such a fun, enjoyable film to just rewatch over and over again. And it's just really fun for me to kind of look at, like, in a lot of my other themed Letterboxd 4s, I've noticed that a lot of them kind of skew more recent. It's really fun for me that the comedies kind of skew older, and it skews more to either from when I was in high school or when I was like a kid, or like this where it's like before I was born, but it was just a fun film that my family watched a lot. It's fun for me to see the comedies kind of skew a little bit older, which Clue obviously is the oldest on this list, but it's one of those that I don't mind. Sometimes older films don't always connect with me, but in comedies, for some reason, it really clicks with me. And the last film is Rat Race. In an ensemble film about easy money, greed, manipulation, and bad driving, a Las Vegas casino tycoon entertains his wealthiest high rollers, a group that will bet on anything, by pitting six ordinary people against each other in a wild dash for $2 million jammed into a locker hundreds of miles away. The tycoon and his wealthy friends monitor each racer's every move and keep track of their favorites. The only rule in this race is that there are no rules. Rat Race was released in 2001 and was directed by Jerry Zucker. The film stars Rowan Atkinson, Whoopi Goldberg, and John Cleese. And finally, we've reached Rat Race. And this is one that I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it because that is the previous video on my channel. There is a whole Finding My Letterboxd 4 video on Rat Race. This is one that I think maybe is the most shocking on this inclusion on this list. You might look at and you think of the greatest comedies of all time, and no one's thinking of Rat Race, as something that fits that mold. But again, for me, because of all the things that I talked about in that video, between it being a quotable comedy and being a childhood film, there's just so much fun for me to be had in Rat Race, and it's interesting. It's one that I do wonder if a lot of people share that same, like people that have seen it, if there are a lot of people that kind of share that same thing where if they like it as much as I do, or if I really am just totally alone on an island with Rat Race. But it is super fun for me. It is, again, just one of the most quotable films. Like, I've got a buddy that has seen this film, and again, sometimes when we're just kind of bored, we'll just quote the film. We'll say some of the lines. Oftentimes it's a lot of Rowan Atkinson's lines, but we'll just say some of the lines from this movie. Like, it's just a fun movie to kind of quote with your friends and to talk about. Again, if your friends have seen it, I'm not sure how many people. It's not the most popular film out there, but again, for me, I really love it. Again, I'm not going to talk really. That's kind of all I'm really going to say here in this video, because there is, again, a whole 20 plus minute video on my channel, the previous video, so I'll put a link to that video in the description of this one as well if you want to hear more of my like complete thoughts on Rat Race. But that is probably my favorite comedy of all time. I mean, that's tough. Oh, that actually is tough now that I think about it, because I mean, like, Everything Everywhere All at Once is a film that was excluded in this video because I've already used it in my themed Letterboxd 4 for Best Picture winners, so that one I probably do like. It's probably a better, like, I like that more than Rat Race, but Rat Race, in terms of, like, this four, it's my favorite of these four, and it's just one of my favorite films of all time for all the reasons that I just said and all the reasons I give in that video, if you want to give that a watch. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know down below in the comments what you think of any of these films that I talked about in this video, or if there's any of your favorite comedies of all time. It'd be fun to just kind of see what films I didn't get to this month, because again, I tried to watch this month more so than any other month. I watched more, because a lot of comedies typically are about 90 minutes, and so it was pretty easy to kind of breeze through a whole lot of different comedies this month. But it's just fun to always just kind of see what different films different people like. So if you just drop those down below in the comments, and then also just a heads up, in a couple days I will upload the theme for May. And again, it's a little bit late, but I'm already watching all of the videos, so we're going to have a lot to talk about when we do that. The plan is, for that, I do plan on kind of getting back on track after this month, so the results video should be posted kind of the first couple days or so into June for May, so pretty quickly we're going to have the theme, and then a couple weeks later we're already going to have the results posted on the channel as well, so I'm super excited to get into that. But if you would like to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future, that video or any other future videos that I have on this channel, I would greatly appreciate it, and have a great day.